Psychiatrist Dr. Judith Joseph is researching and is truly one of the pioneer researchers on this topic of high functioning. Out of all my years in MedCircle, 6 or 7 years at this point, maybe even 8, I've never talked about it, at least not in any type of meaningful, in-depth way. Here to fix that issue, psychiatrist Dr. Judith Joseph and her new book, High Functioning Depression. I love it. Great.
Hello, Kyle. So great to see you.
Yes, you too. Do you identify as someone living with high functioning depression?
I do. In fact, I remember having this moment at my desk in 2020. I was giving this talk to this healthcare system. They were asking me, the psychiatrist, for help dealing with stress. And halfway through the talk, I was like, I think I'm depressed. And I was like, wait a second, how did this happen? I'm a psychiatrist. I should know better. How did this happen to me? And I didn't know it. And then
Yeah.
I wondered how many people like me wear this mask of pathological productivity, but they're struggling on the inside and no one knows it.
Yeah. A lot. I think
Mhm.
a lot. I don't consider myself an expert on mental health. I do consider myself more informed than perhaps the average person you'd pick just by the nature of my job. And I often wonder if people I'm talking to, older people, Dr. Judith, like my dad and his friends, I wonder part of it's cultural for them and how they were raised, but are they living high functioning depression? I'm just going to keep using that term. Do you think it skews more popular among certain demographics?
I think so. And in my book, I talk about something called the biopsychosocial model.
Mm.
And in the social bucket, how were you raised? Culturally, did you even talk about emotions or were you taught to push it down? Or maybe it wasn't even taught and then you just picked up on others around you. That's just not something that we express. And especially if you are someone who comes from a family who didn't have much and you were constantly just doing, busying yourself to push through pain, push through not having resources, you definitely don't have time to talk about it, right? High functioning depression impacts healthcare professionals. Think about the nurses, the doctors who just work through shifts, see all this trauma, don't ever talk about it, and then show up for the next patient, you know? And
Yeah.
think about the the educator, the teacher who just doesn't even like take a break to go to the bathroom. She's there for her students, and but before the end of the day is over, she realizes she hasn't even had a bite to eat. We
Mhm.
push through pain, and many of us were just never given the tools or taught the tools or even given the space to express emotions. So we have these symptoms of depression, but we don't get addressed, we don't get supported because we're high functioning, right? In
Mhm.
mental health, and you know this, Kyle, you've spoken to the world-renowned experts on this platform, MedCircle. We wait for that box of lack of functioning before we do something about it. Why are we waiting? If we educate people with the signs to know when they're having a depression or having symptoms of depression, don't wait for them to check that box of breaking down. Give them the tools so they don't break down. It
Mhm.
sounds really intuitive, but in psychiatry, we wait. We wait for that box to be ticked and then we do something about it.
Isn't that the truth? Very reactive, very reactive.
Mhm.
Speaking of tools, actually, MedCircle is giving away a number of copies of Dr. Judith's books. And so if you are interested in claiming one of these, we're going to be talking about it on our email list with a bubble. So make sure you go to medcircle.com, sign up for your email list, and we'll explain how to get your hands on a copy. Or if you're in not paying like me, you can go get it right now. Okay, wherever books are sold, baby. Okay, so we let's jump into solutions. You in your book, you go through the 5 V's. I love an acronym. I love a 5 letter thing. I love it all. So 5 V's. My one. And I don't even know if we need to go through all of them, Dr. Judith. I think they should read the book to get all 5. But my one was venting as a form of release. I'm a big venter. I have a couple people on my phone, and I call and I go, I just you to tell me I'm right and everybody else is stupid. And that's my venting. Can you explain why and how that works?
Well, I love numbers too. And, in human psychology, people need to quantify things. There's a reason why we always chase things that are quantifiable because for our human brains, if we can count it, it's real, right? The numbers don't lie. And I use 5 because if you imagine most people have 5 fingers. And if you imagine that joy is built into our DNA, but many of us have forgotten how to access that joy. If you use one of the 5 V's every day, you're closer to reclaiming that joy because it's really built into our DNA to experience joy, but we forgot how to access it because many of us forgot who we are. But I'll jump to the second V, which is venting. And venting is expressing the emotions, but there are do's and don'ts to it, right? When you express emotions healthily, you ask for emotional consent. You say, hey, is it okay if I talk to you about this? It's really bothering me. And I just want to make sure that you're in the right headspace right now to have this discussion. If the person says, no, I can't talk right now, then you schedule a time to talk when you can. Venting is not trauma dumping. It's not like
Mm.
telling people everything that's on your mind, no matter how they are ready for it, if they're ready to receive it, if they want to or not, right? And also, when you vent to a person, think about who you're venting to. Are you venting to someone who's like on a power dynamic under you in terms of your power? So for example, if you're talking to a child who is your child, in the hierarchy of things, your child is not going to say no to you. They love you. They want to attach, they want to feel your approval, but they're going to worry about you if you're venting about something that's not really appropriate. The same if you're a leader in an organization and you're venting to your employees who answer to you, they're not going to be like, "Oh, sorry boss, I don't want to hear that now." They're just going to be like, "Sure, like I have no choice. You pay my bills." So you want to think about how to vent. And also there's venting with intention. If you're just like letting off steam and you don't have a true like a real intention for why you're venting, then some of the research studies show that, Kyle, that's like pouring gasoline onto a fire. So if you're angry and you're just like, I'm going to call up my friend and just tell them all about these things, if there's no intention to get feedback, to come up with the resolution, then you're really actually making yourself feel worse, right? Some of the
Ugh,
studies show
that's
that
what
it's like, yeah.
I'm a venter with no intention. I'm an intentionless venter. I need to change that. And I love that intention. One of my favorite.
Yeah. So, and venting doesn't have to be verbal. I have a lot of neurodivergent clients, and many of them would prefer to express their emotions in different ways. So, through drawing, through dancing, through writing in a journal. That's how you express. And then for some who are more faith-based, praying is healthy. Even like crying, like expressing your sadness through tears, that releases the stress in the body and releases, the body's ability to release hormones that soothe you. So there are many different ways to vent.
High functioning depression is not classified in the DSM, is it? It is.
It's not. It's
Oh, it's
not.
not.
And, most of the conditions in the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, will have a checklist. So under depression, you'll see things like, excuse me, you'll see things like poor concentration, low mood, anhedonia, which is a lack of feeling and pleasure and interest in things that once lit you up, and things like guilt and hopelessness and so forth. But at the bottom of the list, it'll say, are these symptoms impairing your functioning significantly or are they causing significant distress? Well, if you're someone like me who copes with their symptoms by overworking and overfunctioning, you're definitely not checking that list for functioning.
Yeah.
And if you're someone who doesn't have the tools or has never really expressed emotion, so there's no way to even check that box of significant distress, you're overlooked. You go to your doctor, you tell them that you're feeling meh or you're having anhedonia, you're having these symptoms of depression. And if you are still functioning and still showing up, they'll say, well, come back when you break down.
Yeah.
And Kyle, that is a broken model. It's a broken model. Look at what's happening in longevity science today, right? They're saying, catch the cancer before it starts, catch the heart disease before it causes a heart attack, catch the osteoporosis before women break their hips, give them the menopause treatments. But in mental health, we're in the dark ages. It's like, let's wait for them to break down and then we'll intervene. And I'm trying to change that.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? I swear sometimes I would go into my therapy appointments dress really nice, just not for the therapy appointment, please. No offense to my doctors, but because I was coming somewhere nice or going somewhere nice. And they treated me differently than if I came in pajamas and a hoodie and they're like, "Oh, he's clearly depressed, clearly depressed." I can look good and be depressed. It's very it's a
So true. So
yeah,
true. And we've heard the stories, right, of people who were like, we had no idea they were suffering, like, but they
yeah,
were so smiley. It's like
uh,
we need to change the way we approach this because we're missing people
yeah,
because we're waiting for them to look like what we think they should look like and not meeting them where they are.
really good. We haven't really defined high functioning depression. How does if someone's watching this, what would be examples or signs or symptoms that they are living with somewhere on the spectrum of high functioning depression?
I often start off with, are you a human being or are you a human doing? And people who have high functioning depression, they're like, that hits. It hits them, right? Because they're people who, when they're sitting still, they feel restless. When they're not busy, they feel empty. They don't understand that emptiness. They don't understand that term anhedonia. They just think, well,
Mhm.
isn't this life? And so they can't sit still. They're constantly doing. They have symptoms of depression like poor concentrations, problems with sleep, appetite changes. They may at times feel restless because there's something called psychomotor agitation. It's like one of the worst medical terms, right? Because people are like, I don't know what that is, but it's like that restlessness. You can't sit still. You just have to keep doing. And the reason that these people don't get the help, even if they have these symptoms of depression, is that they're still functioning. In fact, some of them are over functioning. They're like hitting their goals, they're doing all these things, but it's that anhedonia that leads them to my office. They're just like, I have it all. On the outside, it looks put together. There really aren't any glaring issues, but I just kind of feel empty. I just feel like meh, blah. And I say to them, did you know that that's anhedonia? And they're like, anha what? And I'm like, anhedonia, it's a really old medical term that no one knows.
Mm,
But it's a symptom that we all need to learn about because when we're feeling it, it is a red flag that we are missing out on points of joy,
mm.
that we deserve. Like I said, joy is built into our DNA, but we just forget how to access it. We need to reframe this so that people can access joy.
When I started at MedCircle, Dr. Judith, depression was our number two topic in terms of how much made around it. Number one was anxiety. So when I was reading about high function, I of course got your book. I couldn't help but start thinking about the anxiety portion of that because so many people I talk to have depression and anxiety, depression and anxiety. I actually feel like I'm the abnormal one because I virtually have no anxiety. It's very, very low for me. And the anxiety I do have seems typical. Um, is high functioning anxiety, did that come up in your research?
I didn't talk about anxiety specific to high functioning anxiety, but Kyle, did you know that in the research assessments, when we look at depression and we're adding up the points, we're looking at things like when you took a rest, when you slept, did you feel refreshed?
Uh-huh.
Do you feel tense? Are you able to calm your tension, right? People don't even realize that tension is one of the things that we measure in depression. And
Mm,
anxiety and depression are kind of like a flip of the different sides of the same coin. That's why a lot of the treatments are very similar. A lot of the therapies, a lot of the medications are very similar. But if you think about it, when you're tense and you're stressed, it's really hard to be happy, right? So it makes sense that that's one of the points of joy that is measured in the research. And the reason I say points of joy is because in my clinical practice, when someone comes in to see me in private practice, they'll say, Dr. Judith, I just want to be happy. But in my research practice, when I'm adding up the points of what we measure as happiness, it's all of these sensations. It's when you ate, did you feel that you savored it? Was it delicious? Did you have an appetite? When you saw a loved one, did you feel connected? Did you feel soothed? When you took a rest, did you feel refreshed? When you were stressed, were you able to calm and relieve that tension? These are
mm.
all the points that add up to what happiness is. But when someone comes to the private practice, they're like, I just want to be happy. And I say, well, what's happiness for you? And it's like, well, when I get that job and when I get that partner and I have the family. But if we were to really use the research to measure happiness, we'd see that once people delay happiness for when I get that, they're still unhappy. That's why people end up at my office and they're like, well, I got everything that I wanted, but I'm still not happy because you're missing the mark on joy. If you
Mm,
reframe it and you're accessing your points of joy every day, you're slowing down, you're savoring the food, you're taking that rest, you're taking that sip, of your drink and you're feeling refreshed. That is what joy is, but we miss out on it because we're searching for this idea of happiness.
really good. Really good. Points of joy. This is very good. Um, I want to stay on this because I love happiness. I love that point. To me, you were saying points of joy. I'm thinking mindfulness.
Mm.
I'm thinking you're also telling people you're rushing through your day to get checked, to get the spouse, to get the gold star, and I need you to be mindful as you're missing all these points of joy.
I'm so glad you brought that up because, mindfulness and slowing down and being grounded, these are all things that therapists like myself recommend when someone is in fight or flight, right?
Mm.
And in my research on high functioning depression, trauma is something that is highly correlated with what we see with anhedonia and this lacking of joy. And it makes sense because if you are using your work, your role, the things that you do to busy yourself to avoid processing that trauma, right? Then you're not present.
Yeah.
You're not there. You're not grounded.
Yeah.
So slowing down and using the tools in my book to be grounded and present in these basic human things, that's how you access the joy. But we're also busy. We're missing out on these basic points and we're chasing happiness, this idea, but we're missing the mark on our points of joy.
Yeah. I'm gonna start calculating joy today. And you know what? I'm also gonna do is not get hung up on if I had points of joy or not. I could easily see myself going, "Oh, I need to get my points of joy in," and then feeling bad because I didn't have enough joy points for the day. You know what I mean?
The good thing about that, Kyle, is that if you don't get a point today, you can always get one tomorrow. And it
Yeah.
kind of gamifies it. So my patients, when they have that mind shift, they're like, oh my gosh, this is like so accessible. Like if I didn't get it today, I can get one tomorrow. But
Yeah.
if you're chasing and holding your breath for happiness, I'll be happy when the thing that you're holding your breath for may never happen, right?
Yeah. And then honestly, when it does happen.
Still not happy.
No, you're just like, good thing. Maybe I'm
On
happy.
to
I'm
the
happy for
next.
like her, and then you're like, oh, okay, what's my next thing? I totally get that. One time, I was an animal trainer for years, and I was working up the ladder as an animal trainer, and I was finally getting to this animal that everyone wanted to work with, everyone wanted to be with, and I remember calling my dad and go, I'm a little scared to do this. He goes, why? I go, because then I've done it. There's like nothing else after this. Of the feeling of wanting it, of going after it. To me, that I think that it was a point of joy. It was like that journey of getting there.
Yes, it's a
Uh,
journey.
High functioning, overcome your hidden depression and reclaim your joy. Dr. Judith Jeff. It's available right now or tomorrow. But on Amazon, it's you got a discount right now on Amazon. If you go pre-order it, it'll ship out. So very nice discount there. Or join the MedCircle email list for your chance to get your own copy of Dr. Judith's new book. Dr. Judith, when it comes to high functioning depression, did any of your research or opinions about how that impacts our youngest population under the age of 13 and certainly under the age of 18?
Well, the study looks at adults, and we haven't done the research in children. And this is the first ever study in high functioning depression. But it's interesting because, you know, as someone who lives with high functioning depression, I know that anhedonia is contagious. Like that lack of joy is contagious. Like imagine if you've ever worked for a boss who was joyless. I mean, and you walked into that business, everybody's cranky, everybody's irritable, everybody's tense. But if you've ever worked or you had been lucky enough to work for a boss who was full of joy, you walk into the business and people have a pep in their step and, they're just happy, there's smiles. It's the same with your families. If you're someone who is overperforming, over functioning, busying yourself instead of processing that pain, look around you. Look at your child. Is that child overcommitted? Are they in a gazillion activities? Is their schedule packed up, right? Look at your pets. Is your pet eating and enjoying food, or are they just like, meh, eh? It's contagious. And I've seen this with my patients. Like when they get happier, everyone around them gets happy. They're like, oh, like, wow, what's that about you? What are you doing differently? Is that a new haircut? But no, you're accessing joy. And it's not to say that you're forever happy, you're a constant state of happy. It's different. But you're able to access these points that you were leaving on the table before, and it spreads. And that's why I think it's important to have these talks, because we're now learning about human behavior and how certain patterns are literally contagious, like, not in the way that a virus spreads, but in the way that, cultures spread, behaviors spread. So it's important to access joy because it impacts everyone around you.
Yeah, I love your example with the dog. I mean, we really impacted by every single thing that we see, even if we don't realize we're being impacted. You had something funny in your book. Oh, this is what it is. I wrote it down. Okay, so you're writing a book about high functioning depression, and then you state, if that sounds high functioning AF, if that sounds high functioning AF, because it is. It is high functioning AF. I think it would be worth teasing out the moments where I have to be a high functioning AF. Like I have to, because I have a deadline, I have a thing, it's just part of it, versus the habitual chronic state of being high functioning, essentially. Can you tease out the moments where we have to be high functioning AF?
Yeah, the key point for me is anhedonia. That's my red flag. Like if I'm busy and I'm doing work and I'm enjoying it and I'm getting a sense of meaning and purpose, then I know that this is okay. It's when I'm like, I do the thing, then I take on another thing, and then I take on another thing. And then after a while, I'm just literally on autopilot and there's no joy, meaning, sense, or purpose, right? If I'm not accessing those 5 Vs, then I know something's off. This is me busying again as a coping mechanism, not taking the time to process what's really bothering me. And it's almost like a vicious cycle. People say, well, isn't this the same as burnout? And I say, no. First of all, burnout wasn't even in the DSM since only up until recently, right? But we all knew burnout existed. We weren't waiting for it to hop into the DSM for it to exist. We knew it was there, just like imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is not anywhere in the literature, but we know it's real.
Yeah.
Well, people with high function depression is different than burnout. Burnout is an occupational thing. If you remove us from our occupations, we still can't relax. We're the ones on vacation still booking our kids, ballet. We're the ones who are cleaning out our homes on a relaxing Saturday when everyone else is out resting or doing something fun. We just can't slow down. We're constantly taking on. We're the ones who take on other people's problems. Not that we don't have our own, but we just love to stay busy. We've tied our sense of self-worth to our roles, and we forgot who we are. And that's why it's important to have this framework, because many of us we don't even know how we got here, right? We don't even know that there's past trauma. Sometimes our brains make us forget it as a way to cope, right? And it's adaptive initially. It helps us initially, but over time it wears on us. That's why so many of us are going to the ER. We have chest pain and they're like, nothing's wrong. What's going on? Your body's literally breaking down. Or many of us are coping with substances, right? Yeah. So it's important to understand, what is the past pain that you're running from? Why you shouldn't ignore anhedonia. We should all be accessing joy. That's our birthright. And then the third risk factor, which is people pleasing. I call it masochism in my book, because masochistic personality disorder used to be in the DSM and was yanked out in the 80s because it was thought to be victim blaming. But if you look at the components of masochistic traits, people pleasing, bending over backwards, having a hard time saying no, this stems from this feeling of unworthiness, right? But if we recognize these patterns, we can say, oh my gosh, my past pain is making me feel unworthy. So I bend over backwards and people please, and it's causing me to have anhedonia. I need to slow down. I need to make a change because this is high functioning.
People feel like they can't, though, Dr. Judith.
Mhm.
People feel like can't slow down. You know, they've got 3 kids. They've got a demanding workload. They've got bills. They've got a mortgage. They've got needy friends. They're like, slow down. What is she talking about? When would I do that?
Absolutely, and I'm one of those people. Our slowing down doesn't look like someone else's slowing down.
Yeah. Good point.
Our slowing down is not stopping, right? We have all or nothing thinking, right? If someone says, "Slow down, what's this lady talking about? She must not have bills."
Yeah.
No. Our slowing down is actually thinking about things differently. For example, don't jump from Zoom to Zoom, right? We're penciling in 2 minutes to use the bathroom, and I know it sounds really basic,
Yeah.
but I recently gave a talk to 300 women, and I said, "How many of y'all have gone through a day and then you were bursting and you didn't use the bathroom until the end of the day?" And everyone was laughing. They knew what I meant.
Yeah.
And I said, "Did you know that that pain that you get in your belly, right, when you have to go to the bathroom, that's robbing your joy? That's actually a point we measure in research, physical pain. So use the bathroom." And they're like, "Wow, okay, that's a slowdown I can do." You
That's
know?
what I can do. I can use the bathroom. Yeah,
I
when I need
but
to.
we have to be reminded of these things. And
Yeah, we do.
another slowdown is I asked, how many of you all you eat your lunch in front of your screen, you're like, you don't even like chew it, you're getting acid reflux. They're like, everyone was laughing.
Yeah.
There's no need to shove the food in your mouth like that. You know, in my practice, I have children who are very small, adolescents, adults, and elders. And what I notice, because I keep snacks in my waiting area, when I notice them eating the snacks, the very small children and the elders, they're there eating the snacks and they're like, they're like enjoying it. The adolescents and the adults, they're like, and they're in front of their phones,
Filling up
like
their
we
gut.
miss out on the
Yeah.
savoring of joy, right? So I'm not asking you to stop, but there are opportunities to slow down, and you are a human being, not a human doing, and you're
Yeah.
missing out on these basic points of joy.
Yeah. You could have look like, finding your joy points, your daily joy or something, because so much of the ana seems like to high functioning depression or anhedonia is slow down, find your doable joy, and stick with it.
Yes, it's a plethora of sensations. We're learning that in this depression research. The word happy has so many interpretations.
Mm.
And when we reframe, especially for those who feel hopeless at times, it's like the basic human sensations, right? Are you able to tense your muscles? Are you able to take a deep breath and feel
Mhm.
grounded? Are you able to sip water and feel that quenched thirst, like that thirst quenched? Are you able to eat food and savor the flavors? These are all the things, the plethora of sensations that make what we consider to be happiness in research. But many people are just leaving these points on the table because they don't even realize that this is what's robbing their joy.
Yeah.
And if you retrain yourself, you can access it. And it's not like you're going to be perfect. There are going to be days where you don't get any points, and that's okay. But there's always hope to get another point tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Jan Class says, I'll buy it here, talking about your book in the Netherlands. Be fun. Tonya says, nobody over at least 60 years old were allowed at any time in our lives to talk about mental health. Never heard the words you're using: mindfulness, high functioning, anything. I hear you, Tonya. You're hearing it now. Carmen says, I became an artist and author as an outlet to deal with my pain. So it's not just venting to your friend on the phone, as Dr. Judith mentioned. Really good. There's a good conversation here. I want to ask everyone watching live. Dr. Judith is helping us out here. I'm going to ask you to help out the channel by just click the like button. I don't even comment. I don't care if you subscribe. Click the like button. Okay, it's easy. You just go boop and then you're done. To spread this message to more and more people. Final thing, Dr. Judith. Oh, final thing before Dr. Judith. Go to medcircle.com, join the email list for your chance to get a book, or get it right now at 10% off on Amazon. It's called High Functioning Dr. Judith Joseph, JJ. I love alliteration. Dr. Judith, you've been doing a lot of, I'll call it press for your book. You're getting a lot of questions fired at you. What's the best question you've been asked?
It's why are people having a hard time being happy? And I answer it this way. I say, listen, there is only one you if you're listening, if you're watching, and there will only ever be one you. There's only going to ever be one Kyle in the future of the universe and the history. Why don't you understand the science of your happiness, right? We're using tools that apply to other people, and then we feel so deflated when they don't work for us. Understand the science of your happiness. What makes you unique? In my book, I have a tool that we learn in medical school, and I want everyone to be able to do this tool and use this tool. It's called the biopsychosocial. What are the biological factors that are in the way of your happiness? Is it a medical condition? Is it a family history condition? What are the psychological things in the way of your happiness? Is it trauma? Is it attachment style? What are the social things in the way of your happiness? Is it who you're partnered with? Is it a habit that you're engaged in daily? Is it where you live? But when you draw out this model and you apply the science to you, because you realize that you're here on this earth for a reason and there's only one you, then happiness is within reach because you finally understand the science of what's making you unhappy. So you know how to add those points back for to reclaim your joy. So
Yeah.
understand the science of your happiness because there is only one you and will only ever be one you. So you're here for a reason.
Yeah, if you've sat down and read a 6-book anthology series about a made-up universe and gargoyles and warlords, you certainly can read one book that's all about you. Okay, like be selfish, prioritize yourself. I preach this all the time. Everyone wants to worry about everybody else. I'm like, worry about yourself. You're the most important. Dr. Judith, thank you. I love talking with you. I love learning you. I love everything you've done. I told you this is the topic that people need and want to know about, and I'm so happy that you brought it to us. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's such a joy speaking with you and connecting with you. You really
This was
brought
a
me a
point of
point
joy for
today.
me.
Yes,
Got a
it
point of
was.
joy. All right, good. Guys, track your points of joy today, but don't judge yourself. I'm Kyle Kittleson. Remember, whatever you're going through, you got this.